Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica. I work for a company called UniDays. We call ourselves a student affinity network. Mostly we deal with student verification, discounts, and the experience of being at university. This nearly turned into a very different intro. Before I came on here, my dad's Scottish, and he sent me a text message saying, "Don't worry, don't be nervous. You've got a bit of Scottish in you. Just do as the Celts do. Paint yourself blue, run off on naked, and everyone will be more scared of you than you are them." Like, terrible, terrible life advice, Dad. Thanks. But today, apart from trying to scare you with stories of my family, I'm going to be talking about creating and maintaining impactful dashboards. Might as well start off with, clicker's not working, so I'll have to use the keyboard. Cool. What is a dashboard and why do we care? So the most common form of dashboard that I'm sure you're all familiar with is a good old car dash. I really like the design of this piece of machinery because everybody who's been in a car or knows how to drive one can sit in a front seat and figure out what's going on pretty much straight away. You've got your speedometer and your fuel gauge. These are the first things that you see. They're the biggest dials. These are things that you need to react to in real time. If you're going too fast or too slow, it turns out, you're breaking the law. If you're going to run out of fuel, your car's going to stop, and that's going to cause you issues. They're things that you need to know straight away, and you know how to react to them. Then you have the fog lights and indicator lights. Let's face it, not so much your problem. It's hazard for everyone else, right? A few of my friends drive that way anyway. But with these, again, you know the current situation of your car, it has these lights on. You're confusing or blinding other drivers. You probably need to turn them off in certain situations. And then there's the big, aggressive check engine light, the one that tells you you're going to spend money you can't afford and probably going to get ripped off soon. You can't react to this straight away. You have to go to a dealership or a garage. You have to find the money in the first place, probably tell your parents that you're skint again. It's not the most pleasant one to see, but again, you know how to react to it and when to react to it. So this is why I like car dashboards. They're easy to understand. You know how relevant the information is and how quick you have to react to it, and you know what you need to do. So why do we care in terms of technology? I'm going to first talk about films. So we've all seen kind of disaster films where there's an asteroid coming towards the Earth, or the Tom Cruise films where he has to find some secret agent or something. I don't watch many action films, you can probably tell. But some superhero comes running in with a super important question that needs to be answered really quickly. And this poor person sitting in front of a bunch of screens has to process all this information and give them the answer they need straight away. Works smoothly in the films. Personally, that would give me a right headache. I wouldn't be able to process that much information. But realistically, this happens day to day within technology. I'm a software developer, and it has happened where somebody's come to my desk before and said, "Why is this feature not working?" Or, "How much traffic are we getting through this particular avenue?" Sometimes I'll have a dashboard to help me with that. Other times it involves delving through logs, spending a bit of time, drinking a lot of coffee, and they're waiting and getting more and more impatient, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm doing something that I don't really want to be doing. I just want to be writing code. So dashboarding's a tool to help for when the superheroes are really annoying, and also to help you in your day-to-day. It gives you your information that you need and trends of information you need in an easy to understand, clear format that you know how to react to. So who needs dashboards? That's probably why you're all here. Oh, and sorry for the illustrations. I drew them. Except I don't have an iPad and a stylus. I have my finger and a Nexus, so bear with them. I'm going to talk about 4 different types of dashboarding within a business: business intelligence, management information, operational and development information. And I'm going to talk about them in 3 themes: strategic, tactical, and execution. And throughout this, I'll use the example of a biscuit factory to try and keep some consistency through, because everyone loves a cookie. So let's start with business intelligence. This is primarily used by upper management. They need to know about the health of the system, well, health of the business. They'll be engaging with stakeholders and investors. They'll need to be able to tell if the business is still healthy, whether it's still making money, whether it's going to be in trouble. And when I first started looking into this, I kind of thought it was a lot of statistical voodoo. It pretty much is a little bit statistical voodoo, if I'm honest. But a lot of it is common sense as well. So there's a paper I read which describes different types of dashboarding in war scenarios, which is very bizarre, but I quite like it. The business intelligence is just strategic. How to win the war. It aims towards what are your business goals. Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to get a certain amount of customers? Depends on your product as well. And they use different sorts of stats in order to come up with reasonable goals for their business. In terms of your cookie factory, there's temporal factors, factors to do with time. You have how are we doing compared to last year and how do we predict it's going to go. But you also have things like times of the year that might affect your business. If it's Valentine's Day or Christmas, you might have more custom, but you might also have a lot more competition. How might you deal with that? And customer models which relate to that. If you're more of a family-based cookie industry, I don't know much about the cookie industry, you might have more of an effect towards Christmas and Valentine's. If you're an adult cookie baker, I'm sure there are some out there, then maybe Valentine's is going to have more of an effect, and you need to think about that. So there's many different aspects which work towards how your business is doing and what your goals should be going forward. And dashboards are useful here as well, because when you're talking to stakeholders and investors, if you throw up some Excel sheet or throw some numbers at them, they're not really going to be paying attention, let's be honest. If you throw up a nice graph showing them what's going on, you might be able to get a bit more communication going, get a bit more buy-in. Next, you have management information. So with the war analogy, this is the tactical, this is the battles that go towards the war. In terms of business, these are the smaller projects which go towards making sure the business goal is achieved. So management information, most of the people who use this sort of, well, could use this sort of dash, tend to be the people with Excel sheets in front of them. You've got finance, product, marketing. It can go further than that, and I will go into that soon. But it's for developing these plans towards the overall goal, how to make more money, how to get more customers. So in terms of the cookie factory again, let's say that marketing have decided to put a TV advert out. They'll need a dashboard for this for numerous reasons. First of all, who your customer is again, that customer model. You need to know what kind of time of day you're going to put it out. If it's a daytime TV thing, if it's after a sporting game, if it's when the children come home from school, they're probably breaking a couple of laws in a few different countries for that one. But you need to know who you're aiming it at. And along with the customer behavior, there's the cost and profit aspects of things. Now, adverts are an interesting thing. You can have 10, 20, and 30 long, 10, 20, and 30 second long adverts at different times of day, and the length and time of day to change the price of it. Now, you would think that a 30-second advert's more effective. Actually, completely depends on your customer. So if you're doing a children's ad, they don't have that much attention span. They're not going to listen that long. So you need to consider how much profit you're going to make out of this venture compared to how much it's going to cost to do. Probably teaching my nan to suck eggs on that one. And then you need the baselines for measuring effects. This is where your technical teams will help you out. You want to know how much traffic or how much money you're making through your system, who's like landing on the site, and who goes through to completion and makes some sales. So you need to measure that to begin with, and then put your advert out and see how it's had an effect. It's like going back to school and doing your biology thing. Seeing what the present environment is, poke the bacteria, see if it gets angry. And then you've got operational and development information. Now, I've kind of combined these because they become a bit of a gray area. In terms of the war analogy, execution level information is your front line. You can make all the plans in the world, but unless you've got somebody actually there to execute and shoot your enemy, then you're not going to win those wars. In terms of business, you need infrastructure, you need software. Even if you're a small-time family bakery, you're probably still going to need a website, you're going to need an oven and a till. The overlap between Dev and Ops is kind of why I brought them together. It depends on your company size and structure. It can also depend on how the roles are defined. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to describe operational as measuring how a system runs in a production environment, and developmental on if the software is performing as expected. These two kind of aspects of dashboarding are both looking at the same things, but at different angles. So let's say disaster's happened, something's gone wrong with your database. As a software developer, I'll probably be looking at how our software is interacting with that database. Is it having any locking calls? What are we doing wrong with our code? Operationally, it might be how much disk space do we have on our servers? Is there something going wrong there? And then DevOps, I mean, you're all over. You're just looking at everything, aren't you? I'm trying to learn about DevOps at the moment. It turns out I'm not that great at it. So they're concentrating on the same thing with a different angle. And they need to know about each other, which is very clear. They need to be able to see each other's information. If you're both trying to find out what's wrong with this database, and one person figures it out and the other person doesn't know, well, it's just not good business. So let's go back to our cookie factory. The advert has gone out, seems to be quite successful. In terms of operational and development information, we want to consider, is the website up? Can we actually take orders? Can we deal with the load? Infrastructure-wise, do we need to scale accordingly? Is it really, really successful? Maybe it's been put on after the Super Bowl or something. So again, operational development need to know about the marketing plan so they can act accordingly. Marketing need to know about business so they can work towards the overarching goal. The way I'm talking about it, it kind of looks like this, but it's not. So this is a very wonky representation of a diagram from a place I used to work. I can't use work data, that's naughty. But the idea is that they had these meetings once a month where the whole business came together and we talked about how the work was performing, how different departments were doing, gave each other a pat on the back. And it seemed like a good idea to make a graph representing the business intelligence goal, how much money we want to make in the next quarter or so, and the things affecting it. Originally, it was just marketing information. The new features gone out, marketing initiatives, management information. And then we realized actually operational and dev were having a huge effect as well. Every time we had a service outage, we were losing money. So we had, it was actually a product owner who was responsible for this in the end. We made a front end with just basic HTML and JavaScript, and the back end was all Excel because it's something he's familiar with, it's something he could use. Very important with dashboarding tooling. Make sure the person who's using it can actually use it. I've made that mistake as well. And he collected information from the heads of each of the departments saying, what initiatives have you got at the moment? Have they lost money? Have they made money? Is there any events we need to do? And plotted it on this graph. So all of a sudden, when we had these meetings, instead of people zoning out and wishing they could get back to their day job, you could see the impact your work was having, and it started these conversations. Because we started talking about work coming up, things that had just happened, how could we have prevented it? Maybe we could have worked together. And it kind of gave this realization that dashboarding doesn't just have an effect like statistics and knowing about your system, it has a social effect. It increases transparency and communication and a sense of purpose. Instead of doing this work and not really knowing what you're doing it for, suddenly everybody's kind of united in the reason why they're doing this. I sound like I'm preaching a bit, don't I? But I really like this. I think it's great. So it's not a directional thing. Everybody needs to know about everyone. The work that we do all affects each other, which is a reason why your dashboards need to be pretty good. And I'll give some tips on that in a second. So who needs dashboards? Before I answer this, dashboards have many uses. They can be used to see baselines, make achievable plans, and track projects. They can be used to monitor health, plan improvements, see issues, especially with the operational and dev. They've been using dashboards for longer than anyone else. They're having to use it for a black box system, seeing inputs and outputs, because the things we use, we can't look at all the cogs all the time. It's too complex. So even then, you've got front-end monitoring, security monitoring, performance monitoring, and it could go on. But there's more than this. Dashboards create a sense of unity and purpose. Everybody has the same information and can be on the same page. It can bring us together and try and help us achieve company goals. So you probably knew this, right? Because I wasn't going to say nobody. It's not even a leading title, it's just clickbait. But yeah, everybody does need dashboards. And I said earlier that marketing information wasn't just the people with Excel sheets. There's a brilliant example from people in call centers. So how many of you have companies that have people on calls directly interacting with customers? Yeah, good number. Okay, so with those people, do the people on the phones have to read off a piece of paper or have audition kind of questions and standard answers? Yeah, cool. Well, what if they had a dashboard instead? So going back to our cookie factory, instead of somebody ringing up and getting a standard answer of, we deliver 3 to 5 days a week. If you're having any problems, I'm sorry for that, contact our complaint service. Instead, they look at a dashboard and this person's going, I've ordered 200,000 raspberry cookies, but I need them within the next week. You go, actually, we're low on stock. So we could get you the raspberry in 2 weeks, but we could get you the strawberry ones by tomorrow if you want. Suddenly, the customer's not only getting tailored answers to their needs, but they're getting alternatives and they're getting a better service. Not only that, but the people on the phones aren't having to read these standard answers. I think we've all been in a similar job, and it's not that fun. They're having to be reactive and think about what they can do for that particular customer. It makes life better for everyone. And there's many examples of this. There's like shipping companies who use the same sort of dashboards to ensure that they get their boats to port earlier than usual by considering weather times. It's incredibly powerful. So this is a quote from a book I borrowed from a friend. And it sums up why I think monitoring in general is very important. We were all taught in school in science that whenever you're doing an experiment, you needed the baseline, you prodded the thing, and then you saw if it had a positive or a negative effect, or maybe just neutral. And you kind of need to treat all systems, businesses, and products just like that. I mean, unless you know what effect you're having, it's all just guesswork. Do you really care about this thing that you're working on? I mean, we all want to have good intentions, but realistically, we could be having a negative effect and not knowing about it. So if you don't measure it, you can't improve or manage it. And if you're not measuring it, you probably don't care. Like, this is the summary of why I'm so impassioned about this topic. So on that basis, has anyone worked with dashboards and found them a bit of a waste of time and a hindrance in this room? You can be honest, I won't hit you. Yeah, I get a lot of this. It's a shame. But realistically, it's because dashboarding is really hard to do correctly. And I understand it. So for the second half of this, I'm going to go through a few things that can suggest that maybe they're going awry and what you can do about it. Try and keep those dashboards great. Danger signs. There's more than the ones on this slide. There's quite a few. These are all things that suggest that your monitoring needs a bit of TLC. Remember that alerting, logging, and dashboarding will have different purpose. But this one comes up a lot. Don't know what metrics are for. I actually had a friend who told me that they had a dashboard with a 72 on it, and they'd been working at the place for about 6 months before he turned around and gone, what does that actually mean? Nobody knew. It was just a bright red 72 on their board, and apparently it had been there for about a year, and nobody actually knew what it meant and what it was for. This is going back to that car dashboard again. You need things to be clear, and you need to know how to react to it and when to react to it. But it's an easy trick to fall into. I mean, you end up with dashboards that are too busy, or just ones that aren't visible, that don't have the correct things on. It's no wonder that you can end up with dashboards with not knowing what metrics are for. Personally, if this is the case, I would scrap it. You've got the telemetry in place to get the numbers you need. Go back, do some requirement gathering, find out what the actual purpose of it is, and build it again. Because otherwise you're just building on that hatred for dashboards, and they don't deserve it, they're lovely. And this one's very much linked to it, tick box exercise. So imagine a few people here have worked in an agile environment, Scrum or Kanban. I've definitely worked in a team where they had a post-it saying, do the dashboarding. That's not how you do dashboarding. So it'd end up with some poor disgruntled developer, I have been that person quite a few times, who ends up going, well, that might be a problem. This could be interesting. And you end up with a dashboard before where nobody really knows why we're measuring anything. It should be buy-in from the very beginning. So even if you're in more of a waterfall environment, there's always requirement gathering at some stage. Considering what success looks like, considering what failure looks like, that's always a difficult conversation to have. Try and decide what you need to react to and whether it should be on a dashboard and who the audience for that dashboard is. Who's actually going to be reading this thing? Is it the product owner or the person in marketing? Is it the developer? Don't put them all on the same dashboard, that just gets confusing. And this isn't one I've experienced personally, but it still makes me marvel. One person to do all your dashboards. Who's this poor person? I love monitoring, and I would hate that job. Does anyone see the problem with this already, considering what I've already said? Oh, yeah, that too. Copy paste is a... I do that with code, but I'm not going to... Oh, no, that's on recording. Sorry, boss. I was going to go for communication, because this poor person is sitting there doing dashboards. If it's a big company, they're doing it for a lot of people, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that too. So it's just a standard thing over and over again without thinking what's on it. But they're not involved in the work. They're not seeing the impact of what's happening or what's changing with the system or what that new feature needs. Like, A, that's stressful as hell, but the dashboards that are going to come out of it are just going to be rubbish. Yeah, I didn't swear. So yeah, don't have one person that does your dashboards. If you do, don't fire them. Just get them to work with your teams and maybe find them a nicer job. That would be great. So where do you start? Talking to stakeholders. Don't ask what they want. Like if you've got a toddler and you give them a choice between ice cream and broccoli, they probably need the broccoli. They're gonna pick the ice cream. In fact, don't give me that choice. I'm gonna pick the ice cream. Instead, frame your questions so you find out what they actually need. If it's a higher level dashboard like BI and MI, talk about what's the company goals, what are the key performance indicators, what does success look like? Again, that conversation of how might it fail. The people who are working in these domains are going to know better than anyone what might go wrong. They will be having nightmares about it if it's particularly bad. Weed that information out because you'll want to put an alert around it or put it on your dashboard. In terms of development ops, how do you know an app or feature is working? Just the fact that it's up doesn't mean it's working. Again, what are the KPIs? So what are the key performance indicators? What are the SLAs? If you don't measure your SLAs, it can cost you a lot of money, it turns out. SLAs are service level agreements, which are contracts between internal or external parties that are using your software, for instance. If you break them, you can get fines, you can lose partners, you can lose customers, you can lose reputation. So make sure you measure your SLAs. You don't want to be finding out from your partners and customers that something's going wrong before you know. And again, error cases are very important. So going back to that example of the TV advert for cookies, turn around to the marketing guy, he goes, I want to know how many people are hitting our site. No, you want to know where they're coming from. Like, are they going to our site directly? You want to know if they're actually making a purchase, because they might just be visiting because they've seen the advert and gone, oh, what's that then? have a look at our general interests. You want to see if it's actually going towards the goal of making money. And time proximity is a fun one to actually implement if you get the chance, to see how close it is from when that TV advert was shown to when people were making a purchase, seeing how much of an effect it actually had. So again, it's not what they want, it's what they need. And if you're going to take anything from this talk, this is a mantra for life. For requirement gathering, pushing back, and general things, channel your inner toddler. Are there many parents here or people? Yeah. You know that adorable phase when, adorably irritating phrase, when they just can't stop asking questions? Just stop. I want you to do this to everybody you work with. Don't do it so that you're going to get fired, and don't be annoying. And definitely don't throw yourself on the floor and start screaming. That's not effective in a meeting, it turns out. But find out why they want the information. Why do you need it? Why does it need to live on a dashboard? If it's something that they're going to be using a model of, or they're going to be tracking over time, maybe it should be in a database for somebody to fiddle around with. What does it provide? Could it live somewhere else? Again, it's trying to find out the purpose of this thing and how you're supposed to react to it and when. This is how to keep your dashboards clean, and also how to have a bit of fun with it, if I'm honest. And lifetimes are a key bit of this as well. So people tend to have dashboards that kind of hang around forever, and then they might edit them, maybe build a new one. You end up getting this whole array of dashboards with V1 final version 2 made by Fred as a test. And coming into a company as a new developer, it can be a nightmare to figure out which one you need, let alone the other problems with it. Some dashboards you will need for the entirety of the system, that's fair. Others can just live for the length of a project. Again, going back to that advert, if you've already done one of these, you'll have lessons learned. So you won't use that same dashboard again because you won't have the same requirements, it won't be on TV the same time, you might have a different customer model. It's all a changed state, it's not the same baseline anymore. So measure it for the length of the advert, maybe keep it a little bit afterwards in case anyone needs it, and then scrap it. You don't need it anymore. You're going to be building it again anyway if you have another feature. So again, consider the lifetime. And if you do have something that's going to last forever, prioritize it. So with MI and BI dashboards, they'll probably come up in meetings, etc., when you need to have those conversations. The journey project feature, dev and ops, that's a bit of an interesting one. And I've seen one case where it's done really well. So a team I worked on as a developer, whenever we started a new project, we only had 2 screens next to our desk. We didn't have the banks of screens you see in some places because you can't process that much information. It's the same as with the superhero before. And we certainly didn't have no screens because I would have thrown myself on the floor like a toddler and screamed. We had 2 screens, and whenever we started a new feature or a new project, we'd bring up the MI level dashboard, and we'd bring up the kind of systems and ops dashboards relating to the areas we're going to be touching, and have them on a cycle. The reason for this is those are going to be the areas that are going to be least stable for that amount of time. Everything else seems to be doing pretty well. Don't really need to keep an eye on it. That's alerts for that. But while we were working on it, then it was going to be unstable, and we can check if anything's going wrong. Likewise, we could train our stakeholders on what to see on there, so they could see how the project was going forward, or if there were any problems we hadn't considered. Keep them for 2 weeks after the project was finished, just to make sure everything's dandy, and then store it again. And the cycle would continue. It meant we had the things that we needed in front of us, and everything else was stored. Everything that we needed to react to was there. So prioritizing what's in front of you right now is incredibly useful. Tools. I've been asked about which tool to use. I've used quite a few of these. In all honesty, doesn't really matter. As long as you're building a good business case, again, teaching McGran to suck eggs, but is it for a particular type of monitoring? Zabbix is great for ops monitoring. Tableau's more for BI. If you need something more general, use something more general. Do you need to be able to share it with people without them logging in? What data sources does it support? Does it support the places that you have data currently? Can it cover the type of queries you're normally asking? If it can't, it's probably not right for you. Does your team have experience in it? Now, if they don't, make sure that the training material is spot on, and it will save you so much trouble. There's a lot of good tools that have bad documentation. Look out for that. Cost and hosting. What's the budget? Are you going to self-host? Are you going to get them to host it? That will have a massive effect on your budget. Again, really easy to slip up on, so make sure you're having a conversation with someone who works there. And other features, does it support alerting with Slack or text message? Or maybe it has a webhook and you can do something cool. Does it have the things that you need? So we have this thing in the UK, well, we did have. Do you have blind date here at all? No? Ah, Scylla's the queen, she's amazing. Basically, the idea is you've got one person who asks questions, and then 3 people behind the screen who answer the way that they think's right. And the person who answers the most in the way the person listens to end up going on a date. Just treat your business cases like this. My work hate my Scylla impressions. So yeah, just ask the questions. Nobody's perfect. You're not going to get all the yeses in the world. Your dream man or woman does not exist. I'm sorry to break your hearts, but neither does your dream monitoring tool. So make sure that you've got enough answers that go with what you want, and that's probably the one for you. So I've kind of zipped along things at a very high level and very quickly. But in terms of learning more, Practical Monitoring by Mike Julian is a great starter for 10. It goes through different types of monitoring, how different businesses use them. Really good book. One thing I would say is just because something works for one business doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. Monitoring is incredibly tailored to your needs if you can't tell just from dashboarding alone. So just because Spotify do it, don't do it yourself. It might not be right. But it is a good place to learn. He also does a lot of things that go wrong, which I love hearing about those. There's my blog, just to self-publish a little bit. But I write a lot about the work I've done personally and things I've read. But the most important thing is the people around you. We're surrounded by people from amazing companies with different experiences. They've had pains you haven't experienced yet. And if you hear about them, you don't have to have the pain yourself. Hopefully not anyway. But learn from the people around you. When I first got interested in this, there's a Slack group in Nottingham in the UK that has loads of technologists on it. And I went, I learned about this thing, it's great. And then I got invited into companies and started talking to MDs or operations and found out how they were using these tools. And not only did that get me a bit more excited and interested, and unfortunately now you have to listen to me, but also I just learned so much from them, and it's great. And I've made some great friends through it, so use your community. And talking of community, come to PubConf. I mean, there's beer and there's funny talks and there's some excellent speakers. And if you don't drink, come along anyway. We're not getting absolutely smashed until much later. So it's fine. Apart from Lars, he's drunk already. Bloody Australians. Oh, sorry. It's all right, I know him. It's fine. We come to PubConf. I've got a Twitter competition at the moment. So I'm Jess P. White on Twitter. Send me a joke and you'll be in with a chance of winning a ticket. It's a great giggle. We've covered a lot today, and I have no idea how much time I've taken up because I forgot to start my timer. But we've gone through many layers and type, great for social aspects, scientific method, considering your audience, asking the right question and pushing back, layers of dashboard, tooling, resources, picking the right tool for you, Scylla Black. You will Google her later, let's face it. But that's it. Thank you very much for being very patient. And if you have any questions, do we have time? Yeah, cool. Yeah. Or you can ask me later, I don't mind. Cool. Go have some food then, have some fun. And tell me all about your dashboarding.